Good evening, and welcome back to the Not So Perfect Bigfoot Show. Tonight I have Jonny Twobears with the Sasquatch Encounter Brigade. Sorry, podcast. It's a tongue tire. I can't walk and chew gum, but I think I got it right. Before we go on with Jonny and his experience, I want to give a shout out to Dirt Road Bigfoot. If you guys don't know Dirt Road Bigfoot, please go check them out on YouTube. If you can't find them, look for Icebox 1.5. If he's in there, I'm pretty sure he'll put his channel information in the comments. I want to say thank you to BFFG, Florida Research. They have really supported the show. I also see in the comments Western Ohio Bigfoot Research. Thank you. So I thank you for that moment, Jonny. But Jonny, the show's about you and the Sasquatch Encounter Brigade podcast. So I know your journey started with you having an experience, and let you take it wherever you want to go, sir.
All right. Stop. You were kind of explaining before that, it's more of a conversation than an interview, and that's great because I'll be honest with you. I've done quite a few podcasts, and it just always seems like I tell the same. I mean, of course, you got to tell the same stories. That's what happened, but I get caught and all right, well, it started on this day and then we moved on like this and blah, blah, blah. So, I keep that in mind. So any questions you have, any direction you want to go or whatever, I'm open to it. So that's good to go. Yeah, basically, I guess around 2017, 2018, I currently live in a house. It's one of the real surprising things to me with this whole topic. I'm in a semi-rural area. I'm not in like a super, super like way out in sticks. I've got 6 gas stations within 6 miles of me. I got a Publix 5 miles down the road, but I live on the very edge of a wildlife management area, a pretty big one. So about 2017, 2018, I had pretty much zero interest in this topic. About the only thing that I ever really got into when it came to stuff like this was maybe UFOs. I'd watch documentaries and stuff like that. The only time Bigfoot really even came up is I would watch like Finding Bigfoot with the kids, kind of hard to find things to watch. Usually the kids shows make you want to jump off your roof. So, I could handle watching Finding Bigfoot with them, stuff like that. But, I didn't know anything about it. And then about 2017, 2018, my neighbors were, for lack of a better description, just absolutely being harassed. I've got 2 neighbors. One's about, I think they're 120 yards away. And then I've got another one about 100 yards away to the other side. Both of them are kind of up in front, one on one side and one on the other. And there's 3 houses, and all 3 of those houses are occupied by the same family. You've got 3 different generations that live in these houses. And, we knew them pretty well. Actually worked with one of them, where I currently work now. And they just started basically getting harassed. They were getting like sticks and rocks thrown at them. They'd have like someone beating on the side of the house at night, weird stuff like that. And every time something would happen, the lights would come on, there'd be yelling, I'd get a gun and then run over there, be like, what happened? And they'd tell me, well, this happened, whatever. And I assumed because there's 2 teenagers that lived there, one in one house and one in the other. And I just assumed it was kids messing with the other kids. I knew, in fact, I knew that's what it was 100% at first, kids just being brats. And then it just started getting really weird. It started finding things out in the woods that were like logs or like dead trees that were about maybe 4 to 5 feet long and about as big around as I don't know, maybe a coconut or a grapefruit or whatever, just shoved into the ground. I
Wow.
found a couple other areas that now I know look like they're structures. So along with the weird activity over there and then kind of finding things around here, one of the aha moments after about 6 months, and it got so bad, they had a family member that worked for the sheriff's department. So they had no problem with calling the sheriff's department to come out there. So it got to the point where it was like maybe once every 2 weeks, something like that, maybe even more, that something would happen over there. And then they'd call the cops. And the sheriffs would come out here and we'd walk them around like we never see anybody. It's just this obvious activity of beating on the house, throwing sticks and stuff at the windows. Um, One of the teenagers told me that him and his grandfather were walking down the driveway one night and he got hit with a rock. Now, honestly, I didn't believe him, but his grandfather was with it and
He
said,
was
"Yeah,
one
that's
of the
what happened."
teenagers who wanted to do a Jet Li on, and
Yeah, yeah, I, and it got super frustrating. One, I thought it was kids, but then there was the off chance that, well, what if it's not? You got this big wildlife management area back there. What if, it's bums, or what if it's, you got all these
people.
things going on. I've got young kids. I work nights also. I didn't get home till around midnight every night, so it was a little concerning. And one of these times, I think really kind of what triggered it. There's a bunch of things that kind of triggered it, but one of the weirdest things that I watched happen, there was a couple things like right in a row. One of these nights, I was home and I heard gunshots. I can't remember how many there were, 3 or 4 gunshots. So I went and grabbed my gun and I ran over there to the house. And the guy's standing out in his front yard. I'm like, dude, what happened? Expecting, I didn't know if he'd shot somebody, if he'd been shot, what's going on. And he said a few cuss words, they did it again. Like, did what? Now, I don't remember whether it was they threw a rock at the window or threw a stick, something like that. One of the things that had been going on. And he said, and I called the cops. They're on the way. I'm like, all right, well, I've got a rifle, so I'm not going to stand here and wait with you for the cops to show up. So I'm going to go over here in this wood line and I'm going to just go kind of watch over you until the cops get here. So I walk back towards my house and there's this little thin tree line in between my property and their property. And I went and I got down on one knee and I'm just watching him. He's just out there in his front yard like this, just walking around, just, kicking dirt, waiting on the cops. And I'm sitting there looking at him and all of a sudden a stick about that long and about as big around as my thumb comes flying out of the wood line and hit him right in his chest. And it hit his chest and it bounced off and he cussed and fell and got up and ran and then fell going up the steps again and then went in the house. And that was just like, what is God? What human is just going to have a dude come out with an AR-15 and fire shots into the ground? Me come over there with another AR, stand around and talk. And then while he's standing out there in the middle of the yard, throw a stick at him. That was one of the first things that was like, no, something's not right here.
So,
Well, go ahead.
so when that stick come flying through the air, with your training, you wanted to go toward it, didn't you? That was your instinct.
Yes, but then again, I knew the cops were on the way. And there's actually another time that this happened where the cops pull up and I had a gun and they pulled their gun on me.
Oh.
This happened afterwards because when they called, they told them there's somebody out here or whatever. And he actually went down the wrong driveway. He went down my driveway instead of the other driveway, my other neighbor's driveway. And he pulled up and I'm standing there with a pistol this time, and he gets out like Barney Fife. He's like this big around, young guy. He gets out and pulls his pistol. Drop your gun! Drop your gun! I'm like, great. So I drop my gun and I stand there. I wait for him to come up. And I'm like, dude, I'm the neighbor. I've been helping this whole
I'm
time.
your
So anyway,
backup.
right. So those thoughts were completely gone. There's no way I was going to go over there. After I saw that, but it did. It was like, and and what made it so weird is also it's so over the top to think it was human, but at the same time, it was almost like playful. Like if you're gonna mess with a dude with a gun, you're gonna throw a stick at him. It just didn't make any sense. And it was like I literally watched this happen with my mouth open. It was just so weird, just didn't make any sense. So shortly after that, I started kind of putting two and two together. I guess I had picked up enough things by watching TV and stuff like that I don't know, maybe I need to start looking for something else. And then the activity started over here. And people ask all the time, what changed? Why did it start on my property after so long being over there? I couldn't tell you. I have no idea. I don't know if it was because I was out looking for things or that I would go over there all the time or what. But there was two events that happened really close together that were kind of like the first like Sasquatch related things that happened here. And one of them was I was outside and I was coming down. I've got a walkway that goes across the front of my house that goes down to the driveway. And I was walking down there and my dogs had gone to the fence and they were going nuts, just going absolutely nuts. And I had some pallets, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 pallets that were laying in the driveway right there at the fence. I went and got a flashlight and they're still barking, going crazy. And I walked up to those pallets. I turned my flashlight on and I went to stand up on the pallets to shine my light up, get it up higher. And there was a wood knock, like a super loud wood knock, like a baseball bat on a telephone pole. But at the time, I didn't really know what that was. It was just like a very confusing, very disturbing, loud sound that should not be happening right here, because that's in my head, the picture flashed like telephone pole. And then it went to, which was crazy. I don't know why my brain went there, but went to like deer. Like I'm trying to rationalize what there was there was some gutter out there, but that was metal. I had a pile of like metal whenever we first moved in the house. We did a bunch of stuff. There was still a little bit of metal back there. So my brain's running through all this, like what could it be? And nothing made sense. So I kind of just like brushed that off. And then I don't know how, I really wish that I would have documented all that. I didn't start documenting things till maybe the end of 2018, 2019, something like that. But the next weird thing that happened, again, the dogs went crazy. Mm-hmm. And instead of going like the back side of the fence, they went to like kind of like the corner of the fence. And my chicken coop's over there now, but it used to be real grown up over there. Saplings and briars and stuff like that. So the dogs went nuts again. They went over there. I got a flashlight again. And I walked up to that corner and I could hear bipedal footsteps. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Super obvious. Yes. And it was maybe, I don't know, maybe 25 feet away, something like that. What was really weird is it seems like it was close enough to where I should have been able to see what it was. But then again, it's dark. There's a lot of stuff, briars and saplings and all that. But it was just kind of weird. I couldn't see anything. But when I shined my light over there, the steps would stop moving. And I turned my light off and it would do it again. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Take a few more steps. And then I would turn my light back on again and it would stop. And it did that. I don't know how many times I did it. Maybe 5 times, something like that. But it did that the whole way until it was completely out of earshot. Like it would stop every time I would shine my light. It would quit moving. I didn't hear anything else. And I'd shine my light over there and it would stop. And then I'd turn it off and then start walking again, you know? So that was, and it was actually a little scary. It just, again, it wasn't like human sounding. This wasn't normal human behavior. You would think, go ahead.
That's where your background comes in. You come out of a career, out of training where you had to know your background. You know the difference between a person walking and a wild animal. And that's where your background gives you so much credibility about what you're trying to tone in on. And I just wanted to put that out there for folks that are watching this and just haven't heard your encounter yet.
Right. Yeah, it definitely helped. Uh, what's really been helpful, not just the training, but I guess you'd call it instinct, just feeling that, something's off. Because that's really all I had to go on for a very long time. It was just weird things, and it just didn't feel right. And I mean, I've spent God knows how many hours out in the field or overseas at night doing all kinds of stuff. And then humans don't do that. They're trying to avoid you. They would either stop, maybe lay down, or at least just be still and wait for you to leave. Or they would just run off. They're not gonna, I'm not gonna be able to turn my light on and make them stop walking like in a movie, like the Pink Panther. And then I turn it off and then they step again. It was ridiculous. The whole thing to me was just so confusing. It was just all super weird. It was like kind of animal, but kind of human. And then the weirdest thing of all is out of all these people around here that are dealing with the situation between the two families, nobody's seeing anything. The only time anybody ever saw anything was, and again, I didn't believe him because he was a teenager, but back behind their property on one of these nights that something was happening, he said that he saw there's a trail that goes through the woods and goes back towards a big neighborhood. It's like, I don't know, 800 yards away, something like that. It's up on a hill. But there's a big ravine between that neighborhood and our properties. Well, whatever happened, happened. And he made it out to that trail. And he said a really big, and I hate when people say this, but just this is what he said, a really big black dude in all black was standing in the trail. And he said he walked up to the trail and saw him. He was at the end of the trail and he yelled at him. And he said the guy just stepped off into the woods. And then that was it. So that's the only time anybody saw anything, at that time. So that's really all we had to go on. And then we had, the cops came out here several times. I walked them around the property, showing them, the different trails and all that stuff. I mean, we were really trying to figure out who this was and what was going on. And then, this went on for a while. This probably went on for probably a year or more. And then it got to a point to where I was really, what had happened is, what really kind of pushed me in that direction is me and my son went back in the woods and we found our first track. It was super weird. It was a 3-toed track, which actually, funny enough, the guys from BFFG, they've got a 3-toed track.
Mm-hmm.
Their track looks exactly like the first track I ever found. It was 3 toes. And I believe it was the left foot. And since then, I have found that track 2 other times. So it's only the left foot. So I don't know if it's a deformity or it's just genetics or whatever it is, but it seems to only be that left foot that's got that 3 toes. Anyway, I found that track, me and my son did, and that was kind of like another light bulb, like, oh, wait a second, maybe these things are, maybe these things are real, So I had started listening to podcasts and, kind of half taking it seriously. I was really, honestly, just at the end of my rope with it. My wife, uh, one of the nights, she calls me up at work and tells me that somebody's on the property. We had an old car that was sitting on the side of our property. Her grandmother quit driving, and we brought the car over to my house. And she called me up and said, "Hey, somebody's behind that old car. I can hear them. I can hear them walking in the woods." And I'm like, "Well, look, go get your pistol, go to the back porch." I told her where to aim, which is nowhere really near that car,
Mhm.
but in that general direction. And I said, "Take 2 shots and fire them into the dirt, in that direction." And she did. And then she said she didn't hear anything, nothing ran off or anything like that. But it was one thing when it was over there. When it
Yeah.
started over here, I was getting ticked, especially very frustrated that I could not catch up with whoever this was. Well, one summer I had to have a couple surgeries, one after another. I had a rotator cuff surgery, and then I had disc replacement
Mm.
done on my neck. I had to do I think I did the rotator cuff first, and then I had to wait like 60 days and then do the disc replacement. But I went ahead and had it all done at once. So I was home from work, and part of my recovery was going out in the woods and like looking around, looking for stuff, trying to figure out that. And I was just trying to get exercise, get back moving again. And then I got this bright idea that I was going to start doing nightly armed patrols, and I was going to make my presence very well known. Uh,
Mhm.
Flashlight, gun, and just a presence patrol. Just go out there. I was literally out there yanking on stuff. I was like, well, if this kind of looks like one of those structured things, I'd yank it, throw it down, and break stuff, and then move on. Just being a nuisance. And I don't even know how long I did it for. Maybe a week, 2 weeks, something like that. And at the same time, I was building my kid's treehouse during the day. And there was one afternoon where I got done building the treehouse, and I went and sat. It was in, I don't know, maybe an hour before dark. I went and sat down on my front porch. I'm sitting there. I've got coffee. I'm drinking coffee. And on the back side of the treehouse is the wood line. There's my fence, and then it drops down, and then there's a wood line, and then it goes to my neighbor's property. Well, there was a tree about this big around behind the treehouse, like right on the property line, that just started going,
Yeah.
just super obvious. Um, but I can't see because it's downhill. Like I can't see the bottom 10 feet of this tree. So I jump up and I run out there and I look and I don't see anything. I'm like, what in the world was that? There's no, I don't know. It was nuts. It was going just like this. So that happens. And I'm like, oh yeah, tonight I'm definitely doing my little patrol. Maybe
Mhm.
something's around here. So I get all my stuff together. I open the door and my dogs go straight to that same side of the fence, start barking. I'm like, oh yeah, somebody's here or it's here, whatever it is. So I run out there, I go out of my gate and I go, like I said, it goes downhill back there, but there's a trail that runs like right in between me and my neighbor's property. It's right on the property line. So I get out to the top of the trail and there's this big boulder there. And I'm shining my flashlight around looking. And I walk up and I get to that boulder and the rocks start falling all around me. It's like somebody picked up a handful of rocks and just threw them at me. And nothing hit me. Not one of them hit me, but they were landing all around me. Well, in my head, I had my answer because apparently I hadn't done enough research by then. I'm chasing a human. This is a human. They just threw rocks at me. It's a human. So I'm standing there. I'm looking around everywhere with a flashlight. I don't see anything. I kind of back up and I start getting a little mad that I backed up. I should have just kept
Yeah.
going forward, but I didn't know where they were at. So I start walking again And I get to that same spot and rocks start hitting all around me again. Just like before. It's like somebody threw a handful of rocks up in the air and they all just fell around me. And I stopped and I yelled, "If you hit me with a rock, I'm going to shoot you." And I sat
Sounds
there and I
fair.
waited. Yeah. I was done at this point. And I'm looking around and I don't really hear anything. I'm like, well, they got to be close. So I go down the trail and it kind of cuts into another little trail that goes into a pine thicket back there. And I'm out there maybe 10, 15 minutes looking all through this area. And I don't really hear much of anything. I hear a little bit of movement every once in a while. I don't see anything. I don't hear much of anything. And I'm like, where the hell are they hiding? I know they didn't run off. I didn't hear anything. And to get away from that area, you've got to go out into the woods. And that part of the woods is pretty open. So I should have been able to, see somebody if they ran off. So I'm out there looking around, don't see anything, don't really hear much of anything. And I start walking back up the hill. I get to the top of the hill, and by this time I've got a thermal, just a little cheap thermal. And I get to the top of the hill and I'm looking around at my neighbor's property, the woods behind their house, trying to see maybe they went that direction. And I see what looks like a little bit of a heat signature. So I'm sitting there looking at it, and I am about 30 feet away from another boulder that's right inside the wood line. It's probably about 3 feet tall, maybe 3 feet wide. And it's right there inside the wood line. And as I'm looking, I've got my eye up to the thermal. This thing growls at me. It goes,
Oh,
and instantly I knew right then and there what it was. I knew right then and there that Sasquatch was real. I didn't even have to see the thing. I knew that there was no way in the world that there's another animal here in Georgia that's going to throw rocks at you and then growl like that. So, I can't say 100% because I didn't see it, but that was when like the pretty much the obsession started, was right then and there. And it was so close. I'm not ashamed to say it. It scared the crap out of me, so much so I had a thermal in my hand, and all I would do, I moved my hand or my head enough just to look over there, and I still had my pistol on my hip. And what I was waiting for right after that growl was impact. I just knew something was about to have me, whatever it was. And nothing happened. And I shined my light over there and I didn't see anything. And I still got the video from years ago. Unfortunately, I didn't try to get it on camera. But I think I could only stand there for another 3 minutes. And I'm like, all right, dude, I get it. Like, I know what you are now. Like, I know it all came together right then and there. Like, this is really what I'm dealing with, I'm like, all right, dude, I get it. And I just backed up real slow and I went in the house. The next day I went out there. It's the first time I ever tried to do anything. I brought out a jar of peanut butter, brand new jar, not opened, and a Tupperware container with like a little sample of peanut butter in it. And right where it growled at me from behind that boulder, I put that peanut butter jar down, and then I put that Tupperware with the peanut butter on top of it. I honestly can't remember whether it was the very next day or the day after that. I went out there. The Tupperware, I don't remember whether it was gone or just cleaned out. I think it was just cleaned out. But the lid for the peanut butter jar, it was a yellow. I remember clear as day, it was a yellow lid. That yellow lid was there, but I couldn't find the jar anywhere. And, I've done a lot since with peanut butter jars. I've screwed them in the side of the trees by the cap and all kinds of stuff. When the animal gets into it, it's pretty obvious. like a raccoon, it'll chew straight through the jar. It'll
Yeah.
chew straight through that plastic to get that peanut butter if it knows that peanut butter's in there. So there's going to be obvious telltale signs that an animal got into it. There was no, it was just the lid that was left. So I can't prove that. I don't know if they took it or not, but that's what I found. And then after that, I just became obsessed pretty much with
So
trying to.
I'm sorry. May I point something out? And it's just my observation. Anyone that knows me will tell you I am not the brightest crayon in the box, but every once in a while I'll catch something. I think out of all your neighbors there, this is just my opinion. I'm not a professor of Bigfoot. Um, you were the one that always went toward the sounds, toward the footprints, toward the action. When everyone else
Right.
might have walked out, but they stayed stationary, you went to it. And I think that's why they come to your property. Or who's this dude, coming forward when everyone else seems to be backing off? And I think they were at that point as curious about you as you were of them. And I think that attracted them. Could be wrong because I'm just getting, little pieces here and there.
Well, I think you're right. In fact, that's pretty much my theory. And from what I've seen on my own property and with other people's property, what it looks like to me is that these creatures they'll do stuff like this to mess with people,
Mhm.
and eventually, little by little, test to see what is a human going to do. If I throw a rock, is he going to go get a gun and start shooting in the woods?
Mhm.
Um, if I throw a stick, is he just going to run off and move? What it felt like to me over the years, starting from that point on, is it was incremental steps of activity that just kept ramping up, ramping up, ramping up, ramping up. And they obviously by now they know that I know. And it's taken years to get to the point to where I'm at right now. Um, it was, and I also that night, um, and I don't know what the switch was in my head. Why instead of fear and get rid of them, I went to holy crap, this is the most interesting thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I can't believe these things exist. It would be another year, and people always get mad at me when I tell the story because my first sighting, I was disappointed in on my own property. It was like, because I had already bought a bunch of equipment. It's like a year later after this event. I'd spent hours outside, walking around in the woods, looking for things. I Every single day I'd listen to, anywhere from 2 to 4 hours of podcast, trying to learn everything I could about these things. And a year after I got growled at, I am sitting on my front porch with my dogs, and my my driveway comes at an angle across the front of my house and then comes to the side. And when I'm looking out, my neighbor's house it's kind of straight out but off to the right. And it was during the winter time. And whenever they have their lights on outside, it's a 2-story white house. So when you're looking over at their house, I see their entire house lit up. Well, I'm sitting there on the front porch, and I just happen to look up, and I see a Sasquatch for the first time, full body silhouette from about the ankles all the way to its head. It's just like when you see in the movies where the wolf man walks out in front of the movie screen, and you see the
With the full
silhouette.
moon in the back. Yeah.
Yes, it was perfect silhouette. Uh, it walked out in front of the house. I saw it completely perfectly. Um, it started out sideways. It was its right side. And when it was sideways like that, or I saw its side profile, I could tell. Number one thing I noticed was its chin like stuck out real far, like a real heavy underbite is what it looked like. And then its hair was like the best description from, and now granted, I'm just seeing the silhouette. The hair is like 1980s rock band hair or 1980s wrestler's hair. It's big, like seems
Yeah.
like it's tall and like it's long. And I was so I raised German shepherds. Neither one of them moved. Both of them were sitting right next to me. They didn't even act like they saw anything. But I stood up to try to get a better look, and when I did, it turned and faced towards me, and then I saw its chest, and that's when I was like, "Holy crap!" And people say all the time, it was 4 feet wide. It was dadgum near close to 4 feet wide. I mean, it was super, super wide. It was not super, super tall. I would say maybe 7 feet under. I just don't remember it being that tall, like gargantuan tall. But I do remember it was super, super wide. And that's what was the, not only the chin, but so that's the first time I saw one. And technically, I mean, I was amazed by it. It was great. And it was more confirmation, but it wasn't enough because it's just a silhouette. That's why it was kind of disappointing. It's like I almost had 100% confirmation with my own eyes, but it was enough. Seeing that was enough to I'd already dove in head first, but this just sent everything into overdrive. From that moment on, I had to prove, at least to myself, that these things were 100% real. So, you got any questions so far?
Yeah, confirmation or validation, I should say, is really important because your brain, I don't know about your brain, but my brain tries to say that it tries to find something else that it should be instead of what I'm seeing. But yeah, actually, I do have a question. So BFFG, Johnny, do your neighbors also believe it's a Sasquatch causing all of this, especially after your investigation?
Unfortunately, at the time, the main couple that I knew, they were going through we'll just say some really bad things. I still wasn't confident enough. We were friends, but not to the point to where, hey man, I think a Sasquatch is not only real, but I think that's what's going on here. It wasn't. And there was also some things going on to where it made us both actually want to separate ourselves from situations, So unfortunately, no, but I can tell you this, and I didn't even technically start at the beginning because we're talking about Sasquatch, but starting in 2012, between my house and my neighbor's house, there's been 7 of us, or they're gone now. But at that time, there had been 7 of us, including me, my wife, my son, and my daughter. So that's 4, and 3 adults from the other families that had seen orbs out here. So the orbs technically started before that. That's a whole story in itself. I try to keep the two separate because I know what happens when I mention orbs.
It's hard to keep
I know exactly what happens.
It's really hard to keep them separate when activity you have to have them in the same place. And I mean, right. David Pardue in the chat, he'll tell you Sasquatch orbs. But I understand what you're saying. When you say it out loud, then you become one of those that. But
right,
you're one of those people, you like something tangible. But I had a question about your dogs. I used to be a handler. I had a cool little bomb dog, German Shepherds. You said your German Shepherd stayed by your side when you come out on the porch to come out the house with you. I actually was on your page the other day and watched your dogs actually go over the fence towards something. Have they
that was
to, yeah.
Actually, no, that was my son being a little dork is what he was being. He
Okay.
he throws that particular German Shepherd is absolutely obsessed with her balls. She'll literally all day long, if a human was willing, she would play fetch. You throw that ball, she's gonna get it. She's gonna bring it right back all day long. Yeah, she's AKC working line. So yeah, she's super high drive. So that was just him being a smart aleck. Because he found out that he could throw the ball over the fence and then the dog would jump the fence to go get it, you know.
Oh, okay. Because I got worried. I said, "Oh my God!" I was going to ask you if they ever mess with your livestock or your animals.
No, actually, there has been it's either been 3 or 4 different times, and I almost have one of those times on video to where I actually not only think that the dogs know what the Sasquatch are, that the Sasquatch actually are trying to play with the dogs. Like, I think there's like if nothing else, a mutual interest. Now, I have heard stories just like everybody else has where the Sasquatch will kill dogs. But I think that's probably situational. If my dog were to get out and try to attack them, I have no doubt that Sasquatch would probably kill him. But my dogs don't do that. But I have watched 3 different times. The very first time it happened, I was standing on my front porch. My dog is standing on the sidewalk, and I'm not looking directly at her, but I hear a click, click, like a rock on rock. And I've got a bunch of big rock out in front of my house that's partially underground, like massive rock. So I heard this click, click, and I look up to catch this rock, like roll to the right underneath the front paws of my German Shepherd. Like it was thrown, it bounced and landed right underneath, like in between her front 2 legs. And she looked down and she picked it up and looked at me and dropped it and whimpered and then came up on the porch with me. That's happened. I've got a video of me sitting down on my driveway. And unfortunately, I'm not looking directly at the spot, but it's at night. And I can't remember whether I heard it or saw it out of the corner of my eye, but a stick was thrown from the wood line and it hit more of that rock that's out there. So it hits. I'm recording and the dog runs up to it and nudges it like she's playing with it and then picks it up in her mouth. I've got that on video.
Wow.
To where it's you don't get the exact throw when it hits, but you see her walk up to it and like play with it. Like she just had somebody throw it to her, you know?
Even if you hear the rock and you don't see it land, she's going to go to the rock with a scent on it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. She's going to go right to it. But that's how a lot of this, a lot of the activity that I've gotten around here, it usually starts with a throw. 99% of the time, it's a throw. Something will land in a wood pile or my yard or a bush or whatever. It'll be super obvious. They never do it when I'm looking up. They always, 99% of the time, I've got to be looking down with a video playing on my phone. I figured this out. They won't do anything if I'm just looking at my phone, because I'll try to do it. I'll try to record, turn my camera on, and just look around. They will not do anything if I'm doing that. But if I'm looking down with a video playing, that's when things will happen. And it usually starts with a throw. My dog will react, and then I'll get a vocal or breaks or whatever. You know, that's what's happened 99% of the time. But
I do have a question when you're ready for it. David Pardue. Wait a minute, wrong one. Keeps jumping. He says, do you ever see flashes of light coming from the woods during your encounters?
No, I do have. I did get one of the orbs on video. I actually just posted a picture or a screenshot from that video on our page. Eye shine. There's times that I think I've seen it, but I try to be super careful about because my thing now is evidence. I try to get as much evidence as I can. But if it's in a direction, like I said, there's a neighborhood off in one direction that I know of. Like if I got my neighbor's house over here, they've got lights. Any direction that there's lights, even if I see eye shine, I discount it altogether. I won't even pay attention to it because there's too many ways to make mistakes like that. Say, oh, because I get people all the time. Hey, I saw a light in this video. I saw eye shine in this video. And I pretty much have to be like, it might be, but I really can't go there because of the direction that it's in. The best way to find that, it's got to be straight behind my house where there's nothing back there. But yeah, that's the long answer to say pretty much not really, just orbs.
Yeah. I have a question for leaves my brain here. You eventually brought in team members, didn't you? Can you tell me how that went?
Yeah. So as all this stuff was happening, I started a Facebook page, and literally all I wanted to do was find people to go out with, because as soon as I confirmed it enough, and we'll say at that time I'm at like 95% convinced, okay, that I'm not going crazy, that these things are real. But I'm like, all right, you got all these podcasts, all these people that go looking for them, whatever. I've learned quite a bit. I need to learn more. It's not good enough to just have them here. That's not a way. I can't confirm anything from that unless I directly see them. I've got to be able to go out somewhere else and see if this stuff is repeatable. Can I use these steps? Can I use this same type of evidence? I'm basically trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. So I create a little Facebook group to find other researchers in my area. My first research partner was Mike Taylor. He's a adventure athlete. He's climbed pretty much every mountain in the world.
Wow.
He's like 20 plus years older than me, and I tell you right now, he can run circles around me. He's an endurance athlete. So him and I started going to North Georgia and stuff. We had a couple things happen that were kind of interesting. And then I was contacted by a guy in that Facebook group. His name's Captain Joe. He's currently now, pretty much my partner in crime here. Now, Captain Joe, he was an Army Ranger. He's a captain in the Army Rangers. He was in Iraq. I guess it was after me. Yeah, it was after me. He was over in Iraq. He actually wound up saving the lives of 3 civilians. Their convoy was hit. Yeah, the convoy was hit by an IED. He went to go help the civilians out. They were trapped in the car. He got like the mom out first, then he got the kids, and then he went back for the dad. And then a secondary IED went off. So a lot of what they do is they'll set off one IED first, and then when everybody comes in to help, they set off that secondary. Well, that's what got him. It hurt. It did a lot of damage to his leg, but and he wound up losing it. Eventually, they had to remove it after trying to save it. Anyway, Captain Joe contacted me because at that time, it's probably been, I don't know, I guess 6 years ago now, Captain Joe, I'm not going to tell his whole story because I'd really like for him to come on here and tell it. It's hard. He's super busy, but I'd love for him to come on here. Basically, when he got out, one of the things he was doing is he was setting up, it's called the Mammoth Sniper Challenge. It's a whole bunch of military, police departments, people from all over the world that are long range shooters. It's a contest. Captain Joe was in charge of this contest. Well, in the middle of the daytime, in the middle of this contest, he's using a spotting scope and he sees a Sasquatch go across. I'm going to leave it there. He sees a Sasquatch in the middle of this, middle of the day, this huge sniper competition. And there's a lot more to it. Other stuff in the area. Very interesting story. But anyway, he told me about his story, and he knew that because I'm prior military, that he had tried to talk to other people in the past about it, but they just weren't getting it. They didn't understand how many things would have to go wrong to wind up with a bipedal humanoid thing in the middle of a sniper competition, right? It's just you're talking about losing jobs over something like this. Stuff like that hardly ever happens. Very controlled environment, especially when the military is a controlled environment, but when you get like contractors, which would have been technically what Captain Joe was, then it's, super, super important that everything goes perfect. So he knew I would understand that. So he told me about it. I made a video telling him about his story, blah, blah, blah. So he asked me one day, he's like, "Hey man, let's start a podcast." And I said, "No, I don't want to have anything to do with any of that. I'm not interested." But, I joke about it, but I really didn't. I had no interest in going. I never thought I would be the Sasquatch researcher. I was literally just wanting to prove it to myself, and that was it. But there was a part of it. There's one thing about me, believe it or not, especially coming from the Marine Corps, I can't stand being controlled. I can't stand being lied to, and I can't stand being controlled. Knowing that these things were real and that we've literally been lied to for 274 years about it, that's how the sightings and the fact that they've lived on our land for as long as there's been humans here, there's been sighting reports and stories. The fact that we've been lied to about something like that, something that important, that interesting, that groundbreaking, really rubbed me the wrong way. That, and to think that, like Captain Joe, knowing the quality of person that he was, literally a war hero. He had the sighting he had in the middle of what he was doing, but still didn't really feel like he could tell a lot of people and get that story out. That's what made me, right. And that's what made me want to do it. So we put a team together. Unfortunately, about out of time here, but maybe I can come on for again and go into what we did as a team, because I can tell you this: what we accomplished as a team it's one of the highlights of my life. And I put it to you like that.
Wow.
And I confirmed 100% that these things are 100% real. So,
I'll tell you where I have an interest in, and you might could help me out. And it's probably because when I was a deputy, Fort Bragg used to give us radars to run off of Plank Road outside of Fort Bragg. Worst feeling that I always felt like I was being watched. Pitch dark, 2-lane road going into Hope County, and I got the worst feeling. I've always had a interest of Sasquatch activity on military bases because I know it happens. And so if you ever know someone that's had an experience that they want to talk about, whether on the podcast or just talk to me about it, send them my way. I have a great interest because I always knew, and this was before I was even into, trying to do research and, going out with my husband and having my experience. I knew something was watching me there, and it didn't feel good. So if you ever have anyone you can send my way, I'd be grateful. I also want to say, when you speak with Captain Joe again, tell him I said thank you for his sacrifice and what he did for those folks. I appreciate that, and thank you for your service. And before we go, thank you. Before we go, I would love to have you back. I think you have a lot to tell. I look forward to hearing you on Dirt Road Bigfoot coming up. Tell your lovely wife and your family thank you for giving up their time with you while you were on the show tonight. And I know that
my wife didn't mind.
Well, at the end of the show, I always try to give people a few moments to pay tribute. Do you have someone you like to pay tribute to?
Well, yeah. Speaking of my wife, I've been extremely lucky when it comes to that, uh, she hasn't seen one. She pretty much believes me, but she has zero interest in it. But she has been nothing but supportive of, me trying to do this. And doing this, really, honestly, it can come with a cost. I mean, literally everyone who knows me knows that I'm infatuated with Sasquatch, and probably half of them think I'm crazy. I don't necessarily care, but it could be, if my wife was a different person, that could bother her. I'm sure she gets flack from her family, but she still supports me. And everybody on the team, Captain Joe, Angie Williamson, Scott DeForest, Happy Harris, Lloyd, Hank. We've got a really good group of people who they're just good people, and they've got a lot of integrity, and they've got a lot of patience. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. I appreciate that chance.
All right. Well, thank you. And please tell Angie she's welcome to share any of her podcasts on my channel, in my group, anytime. And
Okay.
thank you for coming on.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll try to get you and Captain Joe together, because he's had not only his sighting there, but there's been other documented sightings on that military base within a mile of each other. So you would love to have him on here, and I'll let him know.
I'm very grateful. Thank you. You have a blessed and wonderful day, and keep squashing.
Oh yeah. Thank you.
Bye-bye.